As most of you know, I am Sandy Weiner. I am a certified dating and relationship coach, and I have over 16 years of experience with a specialty in boundaries and communication skills. Every day, I witness the transformative power of effective communication in relationships. Tonight, we're going to be focusing on the top 5 communication mistakes that can sabotage your relationships. But don't worry, because with the right tools and strategies, and I'm going to share some of those, you can turn these mistakes into opportunities for growth and for deeper connection. I'll be sharing tools. I'll be sharing a couple of great tips. So stay on till the end. Also, I will be sharing a special offer that I have not shared with the public yet. You are the first to hear about it, and I'll be answering your questions at the end. So be sure to stay on. So here's mistake number 1. You wait too long to speak up. Anybody relate to that one? Have you ever found yourself holding back until it's too late to address an issue? Maybe you have let some frustrations simmer until they are boiled over, damaging your relationship in the process. I'll be sharing a powerful tip so you will learn how to speak up sooner, fostering healthier communication from the very start. Are you the type of person who keeps things in until you feel calmer and ready to talk, but by the time you're ready, the other person has no idea what you're talking about? Or maybe they're over it and they don't want to rehash things. If you are stuffing your emotions and the issues seem to bubble up again and again, that is an issue, especially if you don't know how to speak up. So as you probably know, if you don't speak up in real time, it is harder to address the issues later. The more time that passes, the more difficult it is to bring up what happened and how you felt about it. And if you don't speak up at all, the stress takes a toll on your emotional health. So what can you do? You can learn how to process your emotions much more quickly and then learn how to speak up without losing your cool. I'm going to share a story about a client of mine. We're going to call her Maria. She came to me when she was in her late 50s. She was beautiful. She was a successful businesswoman, but her love life was a bit of a mess. She wanted to learn how to finally find a husband after so many failed relationships. And when she first came to me for coaching, she had just broken up with a man that she had been dating for about a year. When she described their relationship, he seemed like he was a pretty good guy. He was caring and kind. But she said that she was sick of compromising so much for him. For example, she was pretty upset that he would always call her during her workout every morning because that was the best time for him to call, but she never said anything. She was sick of traveling over an hour to his house every weekend, but she did it because he had kids and she didn't. And so she figured that her time was more flexible than his. And she never said anything. The problem was she didn't like the drive, but she felt it was the right thing to do. She also wasn't happy about paying for the majority of their expenses when they went out. She bought gifts for their friends. She never asked him to reimburse her because he was a teacher and she figured she made more money. So instead of talking to him about these issues, she broke up with him. Do you see a pattern here? Did anybody recognize themselves in this pattern? Maria was a chronic people pleaser, if you didn't guess it by now. And she lived in the land of assumptions, assuming that he could only call her during her workouts. So why should she ask him to call another time of day when it was better for her? Assuming that he could never spend the weekend at her place, why bring it up? Assuming he had less money, why ask him to reimburse her or help pay for things? She broke up because she assumed he was incapable of change. What did I do? First, we helped her identify her values, her needs, instead of always focusing on other people and neglecting herself, because she was notorious for not taking care of herself. And then we worked on setting boundaries to protect what was most important to her. And finally, she learned how to communicate her feelings and needs so everyone would know what she felt and what she needed. And she had friends who borrowed money and never repaid her. I mean, she was paying her sister's mortgage. It was chronic. And upon reflection, she realized that the issues that she had with the ex-boyfriend had more to do with her people pleasing and keeping so much to herself and never speaking up than it did about his personality or their incompatibility. So she wanted to contact him again and see if he was interested in getting back together with new agreements. And this is really key, new agreements. She was creating these new agreements so that if they did get back together, things would be different. You don't just get back together and hope for change. It has to be something that you co-create. This is all a part of what I teach in my communication skills course, and it's coming up soon, and I'll talk about it in a little bit. Maria's boyfriend was thrilled to hear from her. He actually was dating somebody else. He broke up with her immediately, and he agreed to everything she wanted and needed. And he actually went above and beyond. When they started to communicate more honestly, something remarkable was revealed. That assumption that his salary was lower than hers, so she should always offer to pay. Well, he revealed that he managed money much better than she did, and he had a very large investment portfolio, while she had almost nothing saved for the future. No surprise, because she gave away all her money. As a result, he was able to contribute financially in a much bigger way than she had imagined if she had only spoken up. All of her assumptions turned out to be untrue, and they connected in a much deeper way than ever before. About 6 months later, he asked her to marry him, and Maria became a first-time bride in her late 50s. And it was all because of the communication skills she learned through our coaching. Without these skills, she never would have reconnected. She probably would have repeated these patterns over and over again because that was her nature. And so it doesn't matter how old you were. It doesn't matter what your background is. I mean, she said, well, I come from a long line of people pleasers. My mother was a people pleaser, so it's in my DNA. And I'm like, well, you can change things. So can you see the power of learning these skills and having the courage to speak up from the very start of a relationship? Mistake number 2 is not knowing how to communicate effectively. It's one thing to speak up sooner, but it's another thing to know the words to say. How do we communicate effectively? How many times has a good friend or even a therapist told you, you just need to speak up and tell that person how you feel? Did anyone ever give you the words and help you learn how to say what you need to say? Most of us have never been taught, and most of us are scared that expressing how we feel is only going to make things worse because most of us have never been taught how to communicate in a way that can actually bring us closer instead of pushing the other person away. It's not enough to recognize that we need to speak up. You also have to know how to do so constructively. And as a communications expert, it is my mission to guide you through practical strategies and frameworks to express your feelings and needs with clarity and confidence. This leads to greater understanding and deeper connection in all of your relationships. And I'm talking romantic relationships, friendships, work relationships, family relationships. We are in relationship with so many people all the time. I think when people think about relationships, they think primarily about our romantic relationships, but it is so much deeper. And these skills help you in every aspect of your life. And I will tell you, having my family here for my birthday, and now for about 3 weeks with my daughter here from Israel and all the grandchildren, if I didn't have good communication skills, I would be a wreck right now. And instead, I am pretty relaxed because I set preemptive boundaries. I know how to talk about things when things get heated, and they do when family is together. It is hard to bring up hurt feelings. It's vulnerable, it's scary, but if we're not taught what to say or do, we can get nervous and the words can come out pretty wonky and wrong. We might even end up making things worse. If we don't know how to talk about hard things, a lot of us just stay silent and push our feelings down. But the problem is when you push your feelings down, they have no place to go. They're right beneath the surface, and they will come back to bite you when you least expect it. And here's an example. Let's say you're dating somebody and you're upset with them, but you haven't talked about the issues and you just kind of tamp it down and push it down. And the other person does something that is seemingly benign, like they left the light on after they left the room, and you explode. Why do you always leave the light on? You're so selfish. You only care about yourself. But it's not about the light, is it? Right? So just a simple leaving the light on is not worthy of that response. And that only happens because you haven't worked through your emotions. Instead of having a calm, non-confrontational conversation in real time, when you were first upset, you attack this person at a weird time and they're confused and they're upset with your reaction. I grew up in a family of confusing and reactive people. When my parents were upset, they yelled at each other and they yelled at us. And when it came to chores, my mother expected us to read her mind. She would say, "Why did you clean the bathroom?" But she had never asked us to. Needless to say, our home was very chaotic. I actually begged my parents to get divorced when I was 16 because of the chaos in our house and how uncomfortable it was. My parents loved us, but they did not know how to communicate in a way that was loving and kind. We never knew when the next screaming match was going to happen. Nobody talked about feelings. Our emotional vocabulary consisted of pretty much mad, sad, glad. How many people grew up with people like actually tuning in to emotions, to how do you feel about that? It was just like, don't cry. Why are you crying? You should do this. You shouldn't do that. Many of us grew up in homes where our feelings and needs were not honored or acknowledged. And then we grew up to be adults who didn't know how to communicate well, especially in our romantic relationships. As a result, we were especially afraid of conflict. But what if conflict didn't have to be scary? What if you knew how to resolve conflict peacefully by nipping it in the bud with the right words? With my upcoming course and my unique 3-step method, you're going to be able to process your feelings and needs so that arguments become opportunities to get closer and not further apart. And I always give out powerful scripts, so it takes the challenge out of having tough conversations. I'm going to talk more about what to do when you feel confronted in a minute. But for now, please take a moment and share more about what communication was like when you were growing up. Did anyone in your family ever ask about your feelings? Did you grow up with silence? Did you grow up with yelling? Let me know in the comments. This brings us to mistake number 3, freezing when you're upset or confronted. I will delve into the science behind why we go into fight, flight, freeze, and provide you with some actionable techniques to stay centered and composed even when you're feeling challenged or attacked. There's a scientific reason why most of us freeze. The fight, flight, freeze response is our body's natural reaction to danger. It helps us respond to perceived threats like an oncoming car or a loud noise, or back in the old days, it was a lion was going to attack us. It was real survival. The survival instinct allows us to act quickly and protect ourselves. But most of the time, we are responding to psychological fear, which is perceived danger and not actual physical danger. We like to use an acronym to describe this type of fear: false evidence appearing real. And it's a good way to remember when you're really scared and you're really in that fight, flight, freeze mode, that it's false evidence. It's not true danger. When you are faced with a perceived threat, your brain thinks that you're truly in danger. And that's because it considers the situation to be life-threatening. As a result, your body automatically reacts with the fight, flight, freeze response to keep you safe. The problem is when you're in fight, flight, freeze, you're not empowered. To respond to a perceived threat rationally, you need to pause and get centered. the power of the pause. And we teach that in the class because knowing how to pause and how long to pause and knowing when to come back and how to communicate that is really important. When you are centered, you are calm, you are present. And when you're calm and present, you think and respond more rationally. You're not reactive, you're neutral. That's the state of mind that you want to aim for when you have a tough situation that you need to address. Let's talk about some signs that you are off center. You feel anxious, you get snippy with your tone, you're unable to prioritize what's important to you. You might feel stuck or overwhelmed. You have a hard time making decisions and trusting your instincts. And you might struggle with impulse control or turn to food or alcohol to calm down or numb yourself, or go on Amazon and shop for a lot of things. What do you do when you're off center? So this exercise is one of my favorites, and I'm going to share with you how I put this into practice and how it helped me. But first, I'm going to tell you what it is. This is called Be the Observer. And when you're feeling off center, it helps to try observing yourself from outside yourself. So to do this, you make believe that you're a reporter of your life. You become an observer and you watch what you're thinking, what you're feeling, all the sensations from outside yourself. It's a powerful practice. You're almost like standing above yourself, watching yourself. And it's really important because it provides space between you and whatever's happening in your nervous system. If you can maintain this observer perspective for as long as it's comfortable, it's so, so helpful. And also journaling is another way to be the observer so that you're actually reporting about your life. Jen says, what's the difference between observing and disassociating? Is it the same? Disassociating is actually psychologically very different from observing. Disassociating is an example might be I'm smiling when I'm really angry. So I'm not even aware that my emotions are not matching my face. Observing is you are looking at yourself as a loving observer. You are seeing what's going on, but you're not taking it in and letting it affect you emotionally. So I'm going to give you an example from my life that I told you I would share. I had a father who was bipolar, and towards the end of his life, he needed ECT or shock treatment. And because my parents were divorced, my brother and I would take turns taking him to this outpatient ECT. And I mean, I can talk about it now because it's been a number of years since he's gone. It's been almost 9 years. But taking your father for shock treatments and bringing him in depressed and totally without affect, it takes a toll. One day I brought my computer and I just started asking my father questions and taking down everything he was saying. So instead of feeling upset or sad or like, why am I here? This is not fair. All the feelings that I could have been feeling, like how could, as a daughter, it should not be my role to take my father for shock treatments. I mean, it was just lots of things going through my head. But just typing, I was able to see him without any judgment and to see myself without any judgment. And I just wrote this whole thing and I ended up publishing it because it was so interesting. I mean, you could really understand depression and bipolar disorder by reading the words that my father said. I started using this tool more and more. Instead of getting emotional and angry or whatever was going on, I was able to remove myself a little bit from the situation. Like when I'm in the middle of something very heated emotionally, I'm able to kind of pull myself out and just observe or observe myself having an observation. It removes you from being it and it helps you to observe whatever it is. So I share lots of practical exercises like this one in my comprehensive communications course that is coming up in just a few weeks. Wouldn't it be great to know how to process your feelings so you can have those difficult conversations in real time and stop being so afraid of conflict? So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes, but for now, I'd like to hear from you. What do you do when you feel confronted? Do you go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn? And fawn is something we haven't discussed, but the fawn is similar to people pleasing, where you just try to make everybody else happy instead of taking care of your own needs, you're appeasing everybody else. Mistake number 4 is making assumptions. Assumptions can be relationship wreckers, leading to misunderstandings and conflict. We are going to explore how assumptions get in the way of effective communication. I'm going to share how you can break free from the assumption trap. So get ready to gain clarity and deepen your connections by learning to communicate without the burden of assumptions. Oscar Wilde said, "When you assume, you make an ass out of you and me." Most of us have heard this. And that's because assumptions are one of the most common ways that we sabotage our relationships. I'm going to give you a few examples of what assumptions in dating can sound like, or relationships. Number 1, they didn't text me today, so they're probably dating somebody else. Another version of that is, we had a great first date, but they're back online. They're probably not interested. Another one is, they're so good looking. They must be married, in a relationship, out of my league, so I won't approach them. Another one that I see a lot is, they don't have a college degree, so they must not be very intelligent. Another one is, they didn't ask me out again after that first date. It's because I wasn't smart enough, or maybe I wasn't successful enough, or maybe I'm too successful, maybe I'm too smart, maybe I'm too intimidating. Lots of assumptions here. And my all-time favorite is, if they wanted to, they would. Any of these sound familiar to you? Have you ever made any of these assumptions? I know I've made a few before I became a little more self-aware. Assuming you know how someone else thinks or feels is dangerous. The problem is, we're seeing things from our perspective and not theirs. One of the most important relationship skills is learning the other person's rule book. We all have our own rule books. We all have our own operating manuals, which is something that I work with clients on. How do we operate best? The only thing you can know for sure are the facts about a situation. You don't know a person's feelings or thoughts unless you ask them. Assumptions can ruin relationships because we stop being open and receptive to the other person, or even walk away from a relationship all based on our assumptions, which we've already talked about today. That's what happened to Maria. If we assume we know what someone else thinks or feels about something, first of all, we can end relationships too early, but also the other person can feel misunderstood or judged. Why do people make assumptions? It's often a subconscious need to control. When we don't know how other people think and feel, it can make us feel helpless. Assumptions help us feel that we are smart and we're in control. They can also be a way of avoiding emotional pain. By always assuming that we know what other people think and feel, we avoid the risk of being vulnerable, but we're not open to feedback that might be hurtful. The problem is, if we're not vulnerable and we're not open, we also guard ourselves from real affection, intimacy, and ultimately love. In my course, Show Up, Stand Up, Speak Up, Communication Skills for Better Relationships, I teach you to stop making assumptions and learn how to stay open and connected in your relationships. And I'm going to share a quick exercise to help you figure out if you're making an assumption. Ask yourself, what facts do I have to prove this thought is true? Then ask yourself, what facts do I have to prove this thought is not true? And the last thing to ask yourself is it my own observation, or did someone else tell me this and I assumed it to be true? What assumptions have you made in the past that you learned were not true. You ready for mistake number 5? Expecting them to read your mind. So finally, we're going to confront the misconception that our partners should be mind readers. Mistake number 5 highlights the importance of clear, direct communication in all of our relationships. Have you ever thought to yourself, if they really love me, they would know why I'm upset? They would know what I need. I wouldn't have to ask. One of the biggest mistakes in dating and relationships is expecting somebody to read your mind, to know what you're feeling or needing. Good luck, because people are terrible at mind reading. Why do we expect people to read our minds? When we're in a relationship, we often believe that nobody knows us better than our partner. And the longer the relationship is, the more that perception creates an expectation that our partner should instinctively know what we need. Then those needs become expected without having to explicitly communicate them. The truth is, our partners are not superhuman mind readers. And when we expect them to just know what we're thinking and needing, it sets up the relationship for failure. It's up to us to communicate our feelings, our needs, and our expectations. And over time, when our needs go unmet, frustration and disappointment tend to build up. And eventually, this frustration and disappointment results in resentment towards our partner. And this isn't just about partners, this is about any relationship. And when resentment is unmanaged, it's detrimental to the health of a relationship. Early on in my marriage, my husband surprised me with an ice cream cake for my birthday. And I've told this story before, so if you've heard it, bear with me. It was a lovely gesture because I loved ice cream cakes, those Carvel ice cream cakes with the crunchy center, the cookie crunch. But there was just one small problem. The cake was mint chocolate chip, his favorite flavor, and not mine. The first thought I had was, you guessed it, if he really loved me, he'd have known my favorite flavor. And I judged him as self-centered. And then I took a breath and I thanked him for the cake. And I asked him if he would be willing to get me my favorite flavors, coffee and chocolate, next time. It was a vulnerable ask, but I'm glad I did. When we are hurt, it's hard to ask for what we need. And again, I made an assumption. I made up a story. If he loved me, he would have known. I mean, we'd been married for a couple of years by then. He knew what flavor ice cream I ate, but he didn't do it to hurt me. We feel if somebody really loved us, they would know what to do and say. And for many of us, being loved means feeling understood. So telling someone what we need feels unacceptable. Anyone who has ever been in a committed relationship knows what it's like to want their partner to really understand them without ever having to say a word. But love simply does not work this way. Loving partners value who you are. They express their love by showing a desire to know you better as you both continue to change and evolve, an openness to accept you fully, and compassion to want to help you feel better and happier. But they can't do that if you shut down and expect them to know what you're thinking and feeling. When a partner doesn't understand what you're going through or how to help, it's important to ask yourself if they want to understand and if they want to help. You need to respond from what you know deep in your heart, not from a defensive place. If the answer is no, it's time to rethink your relationship. But if the answer is yes, they have good intention, they want to be there for you, then acknowledge their love and respond in a healthy way. So I'm going to share another quick exercise. And this one is how to go from mind reading to communicating. The first step is awareness, and awareness is almost always the first step in any process. Just notice the feeling in your body when you want to withdraw and expect that your partner will know your thoughts, feelings, and needs, right? So having that awareness, oh, I'm upset. What's going on in my body? I thought my partner would just know what I needed. Step 2 is to remind yourself that your partner has shown that they care about you, even if they sometimes misunderstand you and your needs. So again, this has to be present in your relationship, but if it is, and if you have a history of being cared for, focus on that. Remind yourself. Number 3, tell yourself you trust them to have your best interests in mind before you even say anything. So you're aware that this stuff is going on in your body. You're reminding yourself that they do care for you, even if they sometimes misunderstand you. And you tell yourself you trust them, that they're going to have your best interest in mind. Now it's time to get clear. Step number 4, figure out what you want your partner to provide for you. For instance, you might want them to just listen and not give advice when you vent about work, or you might want them to just hold you after you had a hard day. If you want advice at some point, you'll want to ask for this too. So they're not going to read your mind. You come in, you're sad. I mean, I had this happen to me with an old boyfriend many, 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 many years ago, where I was crying and he thought I had a cold and was totally unaware that I was really sad. And I did not say anything because I didn't know how. And so my feeling was, oh, he's so insensitive. Well, maybe not, but I didn't know how to say, I'm really sad. Step 5 is to follow through with stating your intention and then asking directly and clearly for what you want. Having that awareness, you're processing in your body. You are reminding yourself that your partner is not your enemy. This person has been there for you in the past. They have good intention. They have your best interest in mind. So now you're going to connect. And then you have to get clear. They can't read your mind, right? So you have to get clear. What do you want? If you don't say it, they don't know. So many men think that support is giving advice. My mother thinks support is giving advice. And I tell her, I appreciate that you want to help. And what I need right now is for you just to listen. Can you do that? And then how do people listen? We haven't even gotten into that. When you stop expecting somebody to read your mind and you begin to communicate clearly and calmly, you will soon realize the peace of mind that comes with healthy communication. Do you get caught up in the assumption trap? Let me know in the chat and let me know if that exercise was helpful. So here's a recap of the 5 communication mistakes that I spoke about tonight. Waiting too long to speak up, not knowing how to communicate effectively, freezing when you're upset or confronted, making assumptions, and expecting them to read your mind. So now that you've seen all of these, which can you relate to most? And just post a number in the chat, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, or a combination. As you probably know, what I covered today in this webinar is only the tip of the iceberg. This is just a tiny bit of helping you to increase your emotional intelligence. There are so many other essential communication skills, and here are a few of the ones that I love, which is learning how to process our emotions and our triggers, learning how to communicate your thoughts, feelings, and needs clearly and confidently, learning how to feel heard and understood, and how to deal with difficult people without shutting down or losing your power, engaging in active listening to create better connections, and fighting fair and repair after arguments. Such important life skills and so much more. So I am going to ask you if you're ready to learn these skills and become an empowered and skilled communicator. Most people come to these webinars, they get some new ideas and new insights, and all of that is great. But what I know for sure, because I've been doing this for a very long time, is that you'll soon lose momentum and communication challenges will show up. You attend a webinar, you listen to a podcast, you read a book, you're excited, but it's hard to put it into action because you can't do this on your own so easily. It's very hard to do it on your own. And if you keep doing what you've always done, you'll be in the same place 6 months from now, 12 months from now, And you know the definition of insanity, right? But here's the good news. You have the power to transform these challenges into opportunities for growth and deeper connection. And that's where my course comes in. It's called Show Up, Stand Up, Speak Up, Communication Skills for Better Relationships. What if you could work with me to help you communicate better, resolve conflict with ease, and have peace of mind in all of your relationships at a fraction of the price of private coaching? Let's talk a little bit about price for a minute, because there are coaches who charge $1,500 for a one-day workshop or 2-week workshop for $1,000. And my course runs for 6 weeks and it's priced below that. Clients who work with me privately pay up to $1,500 a month to learn these skills and more. But this is less than the price of a month of coaching, and you work with me live for 6 weeks in my comprehensive course. I keep all my groups small, so you get the attention you deserve. And here's that special offer I was telling you about. If you sign up today, you're going to get $100 off. There's an early bird special, and there's an added bonus, and it's valued at $300, and that's a private session with me. So it's a savings of $400 if you sign up now. The early bird is only available for the next couple of days. Here's what you're going to get. You're going to get 6 modules. They're packed with practical tools and interactive exercises. You get the 6 live coaching sessions. Whether you want to process your emotions more effectively or navigate challenging conversations with confidence or deepen your connection with others, this course is your roadmap to success. So I'm going to ask you if you're ready to become a highly effective communicator and cultivate healthier, more fulfilling relationships. I don't want you to miss out. I have to tell you that when I was looking for advice on how to communicate better, I really struggled. And I don't know if you found the same thing, but there's a lot out there and it's not set up to really help you process in this way. If you find a teacher that you like, to go with that teacher. I bought so many books, and you can look behind me. I've got like a million books, and so many of them are like hyped up on a podcast, and I'll buy it and I'll go like, they didn't tell me how to communicate. They just had a lot of things about what communication is and why it's so important. So what happens in the class is, ahead of the class, you get a worksheet and you get a video exercise. And then you come to the live session having done your homework. And then we review the homework together so that it's mostly coaching. I'm not lecturing. I'm working with you on any struggles, and you bring issues to the table, things that happen during the week, whatever is going on for you. And we work through stuff in real time. If you miss a date due to work, can I replay the course even though I will miss the interactive part? Yes, Carol. And there's also an online forum. So you can type into the online forum anytime and I will answer questions there. And you will get the replay. And you can also submit questions ahead of time if you know you're going to miss a class. Yeah, and doing this with a partner is great. We've done, when I taught boundaries with Teresa Byrne, we had people come with their partners, and it was great because they got to practice stuff together. But if you're single, you don't have a partner, I mean, like I said, I've applied this to work, to my family. I mean, even just today, my daughter came over. She had something she wanted to ask me, and she was really afraid to ask. And it was a simple request. And just being able to talk about it and know that it was a safe space for her and be able to set the environment, it just made the whole conversation so easy. And so, so few of us know how to have hard conversations. You learn a lot about yourself and how you developed your communication style and who you're communicating with. So it's not just enough to know we are a certain type of communicator, but when we're communicating with somebody else, they have a whole different set of rules and a whole different history. And so we're getting to know this other being and they're getting to know us. And if we know ourselves really well, we can communicate that really well. We are so prone to protecting ourselves. And because of that, we guard ourselves and we are not open to the depth of the relationships that we can have. This will help you with every form of communication, with every person you come into contact with, because it changes your lens. It changes how you see the world and it changes how you connect with people. These skills are important everywhere in our lives. Everywhere in our lives. And I really hope to see a lot of you in the course. It would be fantastic to have you there. I love teaching this stuff. I love coaching people one-on-one in groups. Everybody learns from each other. Everybody sees, hey, we're not alone. We all have the same issues. Well, thank you all. Have a really good night.